The grand hall of the Riverview Hotel buzzed with the sounds of Chicago's business elite. Men and women in expensive suits moved around like pieces on a chessboard, each conversation a strategic move toward some future deal. The annual Business Innovation Summit was the place to see and be seen in the Midwest corporate world. Patricia Winters adjusted her designer blazer and checked her reflection in a nearby decorative mirror. At 45, she had the polished look of someone who had clawed her way to the top. As CEO of Pinnacle Solutions, a software company valued at over $300 million, she had earned her reputation as a tough, uncompromising leader who delivered results to shareholders. The Henderson Group just arrived, whispered Robert, her executive assistant. They're by the east entrance. Patricia nodded curtly. The Henderson Group represented exactly the kind of investors she was hunting for at this conference. Pinnacle needed an influx of capital to fund their ambitious expansion plans, and Patricia had no intention of leaving Chicago without securing at least one major investment commitment. "Let's go introduce ourselves," she said, already moving through the crowd with the confident stride that had become her trademark. Her team of 3 executives followed in her wake like a school of fish matching her pace. The conference center sparkled with crystal chandeliers and modern art pieces carefully selected to impress. Waiters glided between groups with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres that most attendees were too busy networking to actually enjoy. This wasn't a place for pleasure. It was a battlefield, dressed up in luxury. As Patricia approached the Henderson Group representatives, she noticed another small gathering forming near them. At its center stood a man she didn't recognize. Tall, with dark skin and a meticulously tailored suit that even her fashion-conscious eye could appreciate. He spoke with quiet confidence, and those around him leaned in to catch his words. "Who's that?" she asked Robert under her breath. Robert glanced over. "I'm not sure. Not on our priority contact list." That was all Patricia needed to hear. In her world, everyone was categorized by their usefulness to Pinnacle Solutions. If Robert hadn't flagged this person, he wasn't worth her limited time. She refocused on the Henderson Group, putting on her professional smile as she approached William Henderson, the white-haired founder who still served as the public face of the investment firm. "William, wonderful to see you again," she said, extending her hand. They had met briefly at a charity gala 6 months earlier, and Patricia prided herself on never forgetting a valuable contact. The next 20 minutes were spent in carefully calibrated conversation. Patricia highlighted Pinnacle's impressive quarterly growth while downplaying the development delays that had frustrated their board. She introduced her team at strategic moments, allowing each to showcase their expertise. This was a dance she had perfected over 15 years in the corporate world. As the conversation with the Henderson Group wound down with promises to meet more formally the next day, Patricia felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Carlos Rodriguez, an old industry colleague who now served as a conference organizer. "Patricia, I've been looking for you," Carlos said warmly. "There's someone you absolutely need to meet." Before she could respond, Carlos was already leading her a few steps away, toward the man she had noticed earlier. Up close, she could see he was younger than she had initially thought, perhaps in his late 30s, with intelligent eyes and a composed demeanor. "Patricia Winters, I'd like you to meet Michael Thompson," Carlos said. "Michael is the founder of Horizon Technologies." Patricia's face remained impassive, but her mind raced. Horizon Technologies wasn't on her radar. Were they a new startup? A competitor she should know about? Without this information, she couldn't calculate the value of this introduction. Michael Thompson smiled and extended his hand. "Ms. Winters, it's a pleasure. I've followed Pinnacle's work in enterprise solutions." With interest, Patricia hesitated, a split-second pause that wouldn't have been noticeable to most, but in the hyper-aware atmosphere of high-level networking, it hung in the air like a wrong note in a symphony. Something in her balked at the introduction, whether it was the unexpected nature of it, the lack of preparation, or something more instinctual and troubling. Instead of taking his hand, she gave a tight smile and a slight nod. "Thank you. If you'll excuse me, I need to catch the Westbrook team before they leave." She turned to Carlos. "We'll catch up properly tomorrow, yes?" Without waiting for a response, Patricia moved away, signaling for Robert to follow. As they navigated through the crowd, Robert leaned in. Should I get more information on Thompson and Horizon? No need, Patricia said dismissively. We have our targets for this conference. Let's stay focused. Robert nodded and made a note on his tablet. This was why Patricia valued him. He never questioned her decisions, unlike her previous assistant who had constantly tried to redirect her attention to what he considered overlooked opportunities. As the evening progressed, Patricia worked the room methodically. She secured dinner meetings with 2 potential investors, charmed a tech journalist into promising a feature on Pinnacle's upcoming product release, and gathered useful intelligence on a competitor's struggling European expansion. It was only as the reception was winding down that she noticed Michael Thompson again. He was engaged in conversation with the CEO of ByteForge, one of the most successful tech companies in the country. The 2 men were talking like old friends, and several other influential figures had joined their circle. For the first time that evening, a flicker of doubt crossed Patricia's mind. Had she miscalculated? But just as quickly she dismissed the thought. She had built Pinnacle through ruthless prioritization of her time and attention. One couldn't succeed by chasing every potential connection. The car is ready whenever you are, Robert informed her quietly. Patricia nodded. Let's go. Send meeting reminders to everyone we spoke with today, and have the team prepare additional materials for the Henderson presentation tomorrow. As they walked toward the exit, Patricia felt eyes on her. She turned slightly to see Michael Thompson watching her leave. Their eyes met briefly across the room, and he gave a small, knowing smile before turning back to his conversation. Something about that smile disturbed her, but Patricia pushed the feeling aside as she stepped into the cool Chicago evening. She had no time for distractions or second-guessing. Tomorrow would be the main event, her presentation to potential investors that would secure Pinnacle's future growth. In her hotel suite later that night, Patricia reviewed her presentation while picking at room service. The Pinnacle team had a final strategy session, going over key talking points and anticipating potential questions. What do we know about the keynote speaker tomorrow? Patricia asked as they were wrapping up. The keynote slot was prime conference real estate, usually reserved for industry heavyweights or visionaries. Some innovation guru, her marketing director replied with a shrug. Been keeping a low profile but apparently has some revolutionary ideas about AI integration in business systems. The conference has been pretty tight-lipped about the details. Patricia nodded absently. Another TED Talk-style performance with big ideas but little practical value, most likely. Still, she would attend. The audience would be full of decision-makers. She needed to impress. As her team filed out, Patricia poured herself a glass of wine and stood by the window overlooking the Chicago skyline. 15 years ago, she had been a middle manager with big ambitions, overlooked and underestimated. Now she commanded rooms and made decisions that affected thousands of employees. She had fought for every inch of her climb to the top. She thought briefly of Michael Thompson and that moment of hesitation. In the solitude of her hotel room, she could admit to herself what had happened. She had seen him only as a black man in a suit, not as a potential valuable contact. The realization made her uncomfortable, but she quickly rationalized it. It was about efficiency, not bias. She couldn't meet everyone, and Carlos hadn't properly explained who Thompson was before the introduction. Patricia finished her wine and closed the curtains. Tomorrow was about securing Pinnacle's future, and she needed to be at her sharpest. Whatever minor networking opportunity she might have missed today was inconsequential in the bigger picture. She couldn't have known that her dismissive interaction with Michael Thompson would come back to haunt her in less than 24 hours, or that the man whose hand she wouldn't shake would soon hold the key to everything she wanted. As she drifted off to sleep, Patricia Winters remained confident in her judgment and secure in her position of power. By this time tomorrow, she expected to be celebrating another victory in her relentless climb to the very top of the business world. The universe, however, had other plans. Plans that would force her to confront not just her business priorities, but the unconscious biases that had been influencing her decisions all along. The grand ballroom of the Riverview Hotel had been transformed overnight. What had been a networking reception was now a sea of chairs facing a sleek stage with massive screens on either side. The Business Innovation Summit's main day had arrived, and the air buzzed with anticipation. Patricia Winters arrived early, claiming a seat in the front row. Image was everything, and being seen in the front showed everyone that Pinnacle Solutions belonged among the industry leaders. She wore a different power suit today. Charcoal, gray with subtle pinstripes, and had spent extra time on her appearance. Her presentation to investors was scheduled for the afternoon breakout session, but the morning keynote would put her in the same room with every major player at the conference. "Coffee black," she said to Robert without looking up from her tablet as he took the seat beside her. He handed her the steaming cup he'd already prepared. The rest of her team spread out strategically around the room, ready to network during breaks. "Henderson confirmed for our presentation," Robert whispered. "Also, Byteforge's CEO and 3 venture capital firms." Patricia allowed herself a small smile. Byteforge was a giant in the industry, and having their CEO attend her presentation was a coup. Perhaps they were considering Pinnacle for acquisition, a thought that both thrilled and concerned her. She had built this company from nothing. Selling it would make her wealthy beyond imagination, but would mean giving up control. The seats around them filled quickly with men and women in business attire, all wearing the same hungry expression, part ambition, part calculation. These were people who measured their worth in stock options and quarterly projections. At precisely 9 a.m., the lights dimmed, and the conference organizer walked onto the stage. Carlos Rodriguez looked polished in a blue suit as he approached the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main session of our 15th Annual Business Innovation Summit," he began. "We have a full day of insights and opportunities ahead, but we're starting with something special." Patricia sipped her coffee, mentally reviewing her own presentation points. The keynote speakers at these events were typically predictable. Either a celebrity CEO everyone already knew or some academic with theories that rarely translated to real-world business applications. Our keynote speaker today has deliberately maintained a low profile despite revolutionizing how we think about artificial intelligence and business systems integration, Carlos continued. His company, Horizon Technologies, was valued at over $2 billion in its last funding round. Yet many of you may be meeting him for the first time today. Patricia's coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. $2 billion. How had a company that valuable stayed off her competitive radar? She pulled out her phone and quickly searched Horizon Technologies, finding surprisingly little beyond a minimalist website and some vague industry mentions. Horizon's breakthrough AI ecosystem has already been adopted by 3 Fortune 10 companies, though those partnerships haven't been publicly announced until today, Carlos said, genuine excitement in his voice. "Please join me in welcoming the founder and CEO of Horizon Technologies, Michael Thompson." Patricia's head snapped up from her phone. The coffee cup in her hand tilted dangerously as she froze in shock. Walking confidently onto the stage was the same man whose handshake she had rejected just yesterday, the same man she had dismissed as not worth her time. Michael Thompson, apparently a tech visionary with a multi-billion-dollar company and Fortune 10 clients. "Thank you, Carlos, and good morning, everyone," Michael said, his voice calm and measured, as he took center stage. The massive screens came to life with the Horizon Technologies logo, sleek, modern, and somehow familiar to Patricia, though she couldn't place why. "I'm not big on lengthy introductions," Michael continued with a small smile. "So let's dive into what matters. How AI integration is about to transform everything about how we conduct business." What followed was the most compelling 45 minutes Patricia had experienced in years. Michael Thompson didn't just understand technology. He had a vision for its application that made every other company, including Pinnacle, seem like they were living in the past. His AI ecosystem wasn't just automating tasks, it was creating entirely new capabilities that Patricia hadn't even considered possible in the near term, and he presented it all with an easy confidence, fielding complex technical questions from the audience with thoughtful, clear answers. No corporate jargon, no evasion, just straightforward brilliance. Patricia sat motionless, her coffee forgotten as it cooled beside her. Every few minutes, Michael would say something that directly addressed a problem Pinnacle had been struggling with for months. It was as if he had read her company's internal strategy documents, The integration challenges most companies face aren't actually technical problems, Michael explained, pacing the stage. They're imagination problems. We've built systems based on old business models, and now we're trying to force new technologies to conform to those outdated structures. Patricia felt a chill. Just last week, she had shut down an ambitious proposal from her development team because it didn't align with Pinnacle's established product architecture. Had she made a massive mistake? On stage, Michael was showing a case study of a financial services company that had implemented Horizon's AI ecosystem. They saw a 78% reduction in processing time and a 42% decrease in operational costs within the first quarter, he said. But more importantly, they discovered entirely new service offerings they couldn't have imagined before. That was exactly what Pinnacle needed, not just incremental improvements but transformative change. The investors she was courting wanted to see bold vision, not just solid performance. Now, I'd like to share something we haven't announced publicly before today, Michael said, his tone shifting slightly. The room leaned forward collectively. Horizon is opening its API and development platform to select partners, he continued. We're looking for companies that share our vision of ethical AI implementation and are willing to collaborate rather than just consume. Patricia felt her heart rate quicken. This was it, the opportunity Pinnacle desperately needed. A partnership with Horizon could catapult them ahead of their competitors and solve their development challenges in one stroke. We'll be accepting applications starting next month, but I'm happy to have preliminary conversations here at the conference, Michael concluded. Thank you for your time. The applause was thunderous. As Michael Thompson left the stage, people were already jumping from their seats, eager to catch him before someone else did. Patricia remained frozen, her mind racing. Yesterday, she had essentially snubbed this man, and now she needed him more than anyone else at the conference. Robert, she finally said, turning to her assistant, who looked equally stunned. We need to get a meeting with Thompson immediately. Robert blinked back to attention. I'll try, but after that presentation, everyone will be trying to reach him. I don't care. Make it happen. Reschedule anything else we have today if necessary. The desperation in her voice was unlike her usual controlled tone. As they stood to leave before the next speaker, Patricia noticed several people pointing in her direction and whispering. Had someone observed her dismissive interaction with Michael yesterday? In the cutthroat world of business, such stories spread quickly. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of networking and sessions, but Patricia's mind remained fixed on Michael Thompson and Horizon Technologies. During the lunch break, she huddled with her team in a corner of the dining area. What do we know about him? About Horizon? She demanded. Her chief technology officer spoke up first. They've been operating mostly in stealth mode for 5 years. Thompson has a background in both computer science and cognitive psychology. Stanford for undergrad, MIT for his master's. Started Horizon with seed funding from Accel Partners. Their AI architecture is revolutionary, added her lead developer, excitement overriding his usual reserve. From what I could gather from the presentation, they've solved the contextual learning problem that everyone else is still struggling with. Patricia processed this information rapidly. And their clients? He mentioned Fortune 10 companies. Global Financial, Tech Core, and Worldwide Retail, her marketing director confirmed after checking her notes. All signed in the last year, all keeping it quiet until today's announcement. These were exactly the kinds of heavyweight clients Pinnacle had been trying to land without success. Michael Thompson had achieved in 5 years what she had been working toward for 15. Robert, any luck with that meeting? She asked. Her assistant shook his head. His schedule is completely booked. His team said they'd put us on a waiting list, but Patricia clenched her jaw. Being put on a waiting list was not something that happened to her. She was Patricia Winters, CEO of Pinnacle Solutions. People waited for her attention, not the other way around. There has to be a way, she insisted. Find someone who knows him personally. Check our board members' connections. There must be someone who can make an introduction. As her team scattered to work their contacts, Patricia stood alone for a moment, watching the room. Across the dining area, she spotted Michael Thompson surrounded by a group of eager executives. Unlike yesterday when she had failed to recognize his importance, today everyone knew exactly who he was. What struck her was his demeanor, the same calm confidence he had shown on stage. No arrogance, no performative authority, just the natural presence of someone who knew his worth without having to prove it to anyone. Patricia felt something unfamiliar twist in her stomach. Was it shame, regret, or simple fear that she had sabotaged her company's future with one dismissive gesture? Her afternoon presentation to investors went well by most standards. She was polished and prepared. The slides were perfect and her team handled questions with expertise. But Patricia could feel the energy in the room wasn't what it should have been. The morning's keynote had changed everything. Investors weren't looking for solid performance and incremental growth anymore. They wanted the kind of vision and disruption Michael Thompson had promised. When William Henderson asked how Pinnacle planned to adapt to the kind of AI integration Horizon had demonstrated, Patricia gave a confident answer about their development roadmap. But inside, she knew it wasn't enough. Their plan suddenly seemed small and conventional compared to what Michael had shown was possible. As the conference day wound down, Patricia still hadn't secured a meeting with Michael Thompson. She stood at the evening networking reception, with a glass of sparkling water, maintaining her professional smile while inwardly seething with frustration. "Quite a day," said a voice beside her. Patricia turned to find Carlos Rodriguez, the conference organizer. "Indeed," she replied smoothly. The keynote was illuminating. Carlos gave her a knowing look. Michael Thompson tends to have that effect on people. He's the real deal. Brilliant but remarkably grounded. Patricia saw an opportunity. "I'd love to discuss potential synergies between Pinnacle and Horizon. We have complementary strengths." "I bet you would," Carlos said with a slight edge to his voice. "Especially now that you know who he is." The comment stung, confirming her fear that her interaction with Michael yesterday had been noticed. Before she could respond, Carlos continued. "Look, Patricia, we've known each other for years, so I'll be direct. Michael told me about your brief encounter yesterday. He doesn't miss much." Patricia felt heat rise to her face, a rare physical betrayal of her emotions. "It was a misunderstanding. I was preoccupied with the Henderson Group meeting." Carlos shrugged. "Maybe. But in my experience, Michael Thompson is an excellent judge of character. If you want a meeting with him now, you're going to need more than your usual networking tactics." With that, Carlos excused himself, leaving Patricia alone with her thoughts and a growing sense that she had made a catastrophic error, one that might cost Pinnacle its future and her the legacy she had worked so hard to build. The morning after Michael Thompson's keynote, Patricia Winters woke up before her alarm. She had barely slept, her mind racing with strategies and contingency plans. The hotel room felt too small, too confining for the storm of thoughts whirling in her head. By 6 a.m. she was fully dressed and had already sent 12 emails. Her team would be meeting her for breakfast at 7, and she needed them prepared for the day's mission. Secure a meeting with Michael Thompson at any cost. Patricia stood at the window, watching the early morning light spread across Chicago's skyline. For the first time in years, she felt genuine fear about her professional future. Pinnacle Solutions had reached a crossroads. Their current technology was solid but becoming outdated quickly. They needed a breakthrough, and after yesterday's keynote, it was clear that Horizon Technologies held the key. A partnership with Horizon would solve everything. Without it, Pinnacle would likely struggle to compete in the rapidly evolving market. And the irony wasn't lost on her that she had literally turned away from this opportunity when it was right in front of her. Her phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was Robert, her assistant. "Found a connection. We'll explain at breakfast." Patricia felt a surge of hope. This was why she paid Robert twice what other executives paid their assistants. He delivered when it mattered most. At exactly 7 a.m., her team assembled in a private dining room. They looked tired but alert, aware of the stakes. Patricia didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Updates?" she asked, looking directly at Robert. He straightened in his chair. I discovered that Thomas Chen from our board of directors attended graduate school with one of Horizon's founding engineers. They've remained friends. I reached out to Thomas last night and he's agreed to make an introduction. Patricia nodded approvingly. This was the kind of resourcefulness she demanded. Timeline? Thomas is calling his friend this morning. Best case scenario, we get a meeting with Thompson today before the conference ends. Worst case, we get on. His calendar for next week in San Francisco? Next week would be too late. The momentum from the conference would be gone, and other companies would have had time to court Horizon. It had to be today. What else do we know about Thompson that might help us secure this meeting? Patricia asked the table. Her chief marketing officer spoke up. I did some digging last night. He's known for being selective about partners. Turns out he's turned down collaborations with several major tech companies because they didn't align with his ethical standards for AI development. Ethical standards? Patricia repeated, slightly confused. In her experience, tech ethics was usually just PR window dressing. Yes. Horizon has a strict framework for AI implementation. They won't work with companies that use their technology for surveillance, personal data exploitation, or applications that might deepen social inequalities. Patricia processed this information. Pinnacle had never positioned itself around ethics, particularly focusing instead on efficiency and profitability. This could be a problem. His background is interesting too, added her research director. Before founding Horizon, he led a non-profit that brought technology education to underserved communities. He still serves on their board and donates substantial amounts to similar causes. So he's idealistic, Patricia said, unable to keep the slight dismissiveness from her tone. Idealistic but practical, corrected her CTO. From what I can tell, he believes ethical AI is also better business in the long run. His results seem to back that up. This complicated things. Patricia had planned to approach Thompson with a straightforward business proposition, access to Pinnacle's enterprise client base in exchange for integration with Horizon's advanced AI. But it seemed a purely transactional approach wouldn't work with him. We need to reframe our pitch, she decided. Robert, work with marketing to emphasize the social impact aspects of our business. Find any charitable initiatives we've supported, diversity programs, anything that shows we're aligned with his values. Robert nodded, though they all knew Pinnacle's efforts in those areas had been minimal, just enough to check the corporate social responsibility boxes. As the team discussed strategy, Patricia's phone rang. It was Thomas Chen, their board member. She stepped away from the table to take the call. Thomas, thank you for your help with this, she said, foregoing her usual directness. Patricia, I reached out to my contact at Horizon, Thomas replied, his tone oddly hesitant. He was reluctant. Reluctant? What does that mean? Thomas sighed. Apparently, word has spread about your interaction with Thompson at the reception. My friend said Thompson was not surprised when you didn't recognize him or his company, but he was put off by the way you dismissed him. Patricia felt heat rise to her face. That's ridiculous. It was a busy networking event. I didn't have time to speak with everyone. I understand that, Thomas said carefully, but perception matters in these situations. Thompson apparently has a reputation for valuing genuine connections over business expedience. My friend suggested that if you want this meeting, you need to take a different approach. What approach would that be? Patricia asked, struggling to keep the irritation from her voice. Honesty might be a start, Thomas suggested. Acknowledge what happened rather than pretending it was just a scheduling issue. The suggestion felt like an affront. Patricia Winters didn't apologize for making efficient networking decisions, but the stakes were too high to let pride get in the way. I'll consider it, she said stiffly. Did your friend offer any other insights? Just one. Thompson is speaking on a panel about ethical AI implementation at 2 p.m. today. It's a smaller session in the Cedar Room. Might be a good opportunity to approach him in a less crowded setting. After ending the call, Patricia rejoined her team with a determined expression. Change of plans. We're attending the ethical AI panel at 2 p.m. I'll approach Thompson afterward. The hours until the panel dragged by, painfully slow. Patricia sent her team to attend other sessions relevant to their roles. while she retreated to her hotel room to research everything she could about Michael Thompson and Horizon Technologies. What she found surprised her. Unlike many tech CEOs who cultivated personal brands and chased media attention, Thompson had deliberately stayed out of the spotlight. The few interviews he had given focused almost entirely on the technology and its applications, not on himself. He spoke passionately about creating AI systems that amplified human potential, rather than replacing human workers. One article quoted him saying, "The greatest risk of AI isn't that it will become too intelligent, but that we'll use it unintelligently, to perpetuate existing biases and inequalities rather than to help solve our most pressing human challenges." Patricia found herself grudgingly impressed. This wasn't just PR talk. Thompson's business decisions consistently aligned with these principles. Horizon had turned down lucrative contracts when the applications conflicted with their ethical framework. 1:45 p.m. Patricia arrived at the Cedar Room, choosing a seat near the back where she could observe without being obvious. The room was smaller than the main ballroom, with perhaps 60 seats arranged in a semicircle, facing a panel table with 5 chairs. Michael Thompson entered a few minutes before the session began, chatting easily with the other panelists. He wore a different suit today, navy blue with a subtle pattern, but carried himself with the same quiet confidence she had observed yesterday. The panel discussion was enlightening. While the other experts spoke in hypotheticals and broad principles, Thompson offered specific examples and practical frameworks for implementing ethical considerations into AI development. He wasn't just talking about being good, he was showing how ethical choices led to better products and more sustainable business models. The companies that will thrive in the next decade aren't the ones that build the most powerful AI, he said at one point. They're the ones that build the most thoughtful AI, systems that augment human capabilities while respecting human autonomy and dignity. Patricia found herself taking notes, something she rarely did at these industry panels. There was substance, here, ideas that challenged her typical approach to business and technology. When the session ended, the panelists were immediately surrounded by attendees with questions. Patricia waited patiently, watching as Thompson gave each person his full attention, no matter their apparent status or importance. Finally, as the crowd thinned, she saw her opportunity. Thompson was gathering his notes when she approached the panel table. "Mr. Thompson," she said, her voice more tentative than usual. "Patricia Winters, CEO of Pinnacle Solutions. I was hoping I might have a word with you." He looked up, recognition immediately crossing his face. For a moment he said nothing, just studied her with those intelligent eyes. Then, "Ms. Winters, I remember our brief encounter." There was no coldness in his tone, but no particular warmth either, just a neutral acknowledgement. "That's actually what I wanted to discuss," Patricia said, fighting against her instinct to launch into her prepared business pitch. "I owe you an apology for yesterday." The words felt foreign in her mouth. Patricia Winters didn't apologize for business decisions, but here she was. Thompson raised an eyebrow slightly. "Do you? Why is that?" It was a simple question, but Patricia suddenly realized the answer wasn't simple at all. Why exactly was she apologizing? Because he turned out to be important? Because she needed something from him now? Or because, regardless of who he was, her dismissive behavior had been wrong? She hesitated, genuinely struggling for perhaps the first time in her professional life. "I made a judgment without adequate information. That was unprofessional of me." Thompson nodded slowly, but said nothing, as if waiting for her to continue. Patricia felt uncharacteristically off balance. In negotiation training, they taught that silence was a powerful tool, and Thompson was using it skillfully. She found herself filling the void. "Your keynote yesterday was extraordinary," she said. "The AI integration capabilities you've developed at Horizon are exactly what the industry needs right now." "Thank you," he replied simply. "Then, is that why you're approaching me today? Because you've reassessed Horizon's value to Pinnacle?" The directness of the question caught her off guard. In the corporate world, such transactions were usually dressed up in more diplomatic language. "Partly, yes," she admitted. deciding that honesty might be her only viable strategy. Your technology could help us solve challenges we've been struggling with, but I'm also intrigued by your approach to ethical implementation. It's not something we've focused on enough at Pinnacle. Something shifted in Thompson's expression, not quite softening, but a subtle change that suggested he appreciated the candor. At least that's honest, he said. Most CEOs who approached me today suddenly claimed they've always been passionate about ethical AI. Patricia felt a small opening and pressed forward. Would you be willing to discuss potential collaboration between our companies, perhaps over dinner this evening? Thompson considered this for a moment. I already have dinner plans with the Byteforge team, he said, but I could meet you for coffee at 4 p.m. in the hotel lobby. Coffee, not dinner. A brief meeting, not an extended discussion. It wasn't what Patricia had hoped for, but it was something. I appreciate that. Thank you, she said, handing him her business card with her cell number handwritten on the back. I look forward to continuing our conversation. As she walked away, Patricia felt oddly vulnerable. She had just shown more genuine emotion and humility in that brief exchange than she typically allowed herself to display in a month of business interactions. Back in her hotel room, she called her team together. I have a meeting with Thompson at 4, coffee in the lobby. I need everything we have on ethical AI implementation and how we could potentially align our development roadmap with Horizon's framework. Her team looked at her with surprise. This wasn't the aggressive deal-making approach they were accustomed to from her. Are we repositioning Pinnacle as an ethical AI company? Her marketing director asked cautiously. Patricia paused, considering the question seriously. Not as a marketing ploy, she said finally, but perhaps as a genuine evolution of our approach. Thompson made some compelling points about the long-term business advantages. The team exchanged glances, clearly taken aback by this shift in their CEO's thinking. As they dispersed to prepare materials for her meeting, Patricia stood alone again at the window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. In less than 48 hours, her perspective had been challenged in ways she hadn't experienced in years. And in just 1 hour, she would have a chance to either salvage Pinnacle's future or watch it slip away, all depending on whether Michael Thompson believed her capable of change. The irony wasn't lost on her that a man she had once deemed not worth her time now held her professional fate in his hands. But beyond the business implications, Patricia found herself genuinely curious about what Thompson would say. For the first time in a long while, she was approaching a meeting not just to win, but to learn. The hotel lobby bustled with conference attendees, many checking out early to catch flights home. Patricia arrived 10 minutes before their scheduled meeting time, choosing a quiet corner of the cafe area with 2 comfortable chairs. She had deliberately come alone, without the usual entourage of executives that accompanied her to important business meetings. This needed to be a genuine conversation, not a corporate performance. She ordered a black coffee and reviewed her notes one last time. Her team had prepared an impressive brief on how Pinnacle could adapt their development roadmap to align with Horizon's ethical AI framework. The document was thorough and professional, but as Patricia flipped through it, she wondered if this approach was still missing the point. At precisely 4 p.m., Michael Thompson walked into the lobby. He spotted her immediately and made his way over, carrying himself with that same quiet confidence she had observed throughout the conference. He wore no tie now, his collar open, as if signaling this was a more casual conversation than their previous encounters. Ms. Winters, he said, extending his hand. Patricia stood and took it without hesitation. His handshake was firm but not aggressive, the handshake of someone with nothing to prove. Thank you for making time, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. Would you like something to drink? Green tea would be great, he replied. Patricia signaled to the waiter and they sat in silence until his tea arrived. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence, but it held a weight of expectation. So, Michael said finally, after taking a sip of his tea. Pinnacle Solutions. You've built an impressive company over the past 15 years. Patricia blinked in surprise. He had done his homework on her. Thank you, she said, though after your keynote yesterday, I'm questioning some of our recent strategic decisions. Michael nodded thoughtfully. The entire industry is at an inflection point. The companies that adapt will thrive. Those that don't will become irrelevant. Surprisingly quickly. There was no smugness in his assessment, just a calm statement of his view of the technological landscape. "That's why I wanted to meet with you," Patricia said, fighting her instinct to launch into a rehearsed pitch. Horizon's AI ecosystem is clearly years ahead of what others are doing, including us at Pinnacle. "Technology advances aren't the whole story," Michael replied. "The philosophical framework guiding how we implement those advances matters just as much." Patricia took a deep breath. It was time for honesty, not strategic positioning. "I'll be direct, Mr. Thompson. When we briefly met at the reception, I didn't give you the respect or attention you deserved. I made a snap judgment based on insufficient information." Michael studied her face. "Let's be more specific, Ms. Winters. You saw a black man you didn't recognize, and you decided I wasn't worth your time." The bluntness of his statement hit her like a physical force. In the corporate world, such direct acknowledgments of racial dynamics were rare, hidden beneath layers of polite language and plausible deniability. Patricia began, then stopped. Her instinct was to deny, to offer alternative explanations that would be more palatable. But something told her that approach would end any chance of a productive conversation. "Yes," she admitted finally. "That was part of it. Not consciously, perhaps, but I made assumptions I shouldn't have made." Michael nodded, his expression not angry, but evaluative. "Thank you for acknowledging that. It happens more often than you might think, even in these supposedly enlightened corporate spaces." "I imagine it does," Patricia said quietly. She hadn't come prepared for this level of candor. But now that they were here, she felt compelled to continue. "And I suspect you've achieved your success despite facing that kind of dismissal regularly." "Yes and no," Michael replied, taking another sip of his tea. "Yes, I've encountered plenty of barriers and biases, but I've also had advocates and allies who saw past their initial assumptions. And in some ways, staying out of the spotlight has been an advantage. I've been able to build Horizon based on substance rather than perception." Patricia nodded, absorbing this perspective. "After your keynote, I initially wanted to meet with you purely for business reasons. Horizon's technology could solve critical challenges for Pinnacle. But after attending your panel on ethical AI, I'm genuinely interested in your approach beyond just the potential business advantages." Michael studied her for a moment, as if assessing her sincerity. "Tell me what resonated with you from the panel." It was a test, Patricia realized. He wanted to know if she had really been listening or was just saying what she thought would appeal to him. "Your point about AI systems reflecting the biases of their creators unless deliberately designed. Otherwise," she said, "it made me think about how our product development team is structured and the limited perspectives we bring to the table." Something in Michael's expression shifted slightly, a subtle acknowledgement that her answer had surprised him. "That's a critical insight," he said. "Most companies approach diversity as a PR issue or a legal requirement. They miss that homogeneous teams build limited products that serve limited markets." "We're certainly guilty of that at Pinnacle," Patricia admitted. "Our executive team and our development team lack diverse perspectives. It's something I've known abstractly but haven't prioritized addressing." "Why not?" Michael asked. The question was simple but penetrating. Patricia considered deflecting but decided to maintain the honesty that had brought them this far. "Because I didn't see it as directly tied to our bottom line. I viewed it as a secondary concern, something to address after we'd secured our market position. And now I'm reconsidering that approach. Your success at Horizon suggests that integrating ethical considerations and diverse perspectives isn't just morally right. It's good business." Michael nodded. "It's both. Ethical AI isn't just about avoiding harm, though that matters enormously. It's about building better, more robust, more widely applicable systems. When your team includes people with diverse lived experiences, they catch blind spots and identify opportunities that a homogeneous group would miss entirely." As he spoke, Patricia felt a genuine shift in her thinking. This wasn't just about securing a partnership with Horizon anymore. It was about recognizing a fundamental flaw in how she had built Pinnacle, not just technologically, but structurally and philosophically. "I'd like to learn more," she said, surprising herself with her sincerity. Not just about integrating with Horizon's technology, but about implementing these principles at Pinnacle. Michael's expression remained thoughtful. "That's encouraging to hear. But I should be clear about something. Horizon is very selective about our partnerships. We don't just license our technology to anyone willing to pay. We look for companies that share our vision, or are genuinely committed to evolving in that direction." "And you're skeptical about Pinnacle's commitment," Patricia stated, rather than asked. "Wouldn't you be? People often have epiphanies at conferences that don't translate to real change once they return to the daily pressures of running their businesses." It was a fair point. Patricia had seen it happen countless times, including with herself. "You're right to be skeptical," she acknowledged. "I can sit here and tell you I'm committed to change, but words are easy. Actions are what matter." "Exactly," Michael said. He paused, then leaned forward slightly. "Let me ask you something, Ms. Winters. Before you knew who I was, before you saw my keynote, would you have been interested in these principles at all?" The question cut to the heart of the matter. Patricia could feel the weight of it, the implicit challenge to her character and values. "Honestly, probably not," she admitted. "I would have seen them as idealistic distractions from the real business of building products and growing market share." Michael nodded, seemingly appreciating her candor. "And now? Now I see that was a false dichotomy. Your success with Horizon proves that ethical principles and business success aren't opposing forces. They can be complementary when implemented thoughtfully." "That's a start," Michael said. "But changing an established company culture is much harder than building these values in from the beginning." "It is," Patricia agreed. "But that doesn't mean it's not worth doing." Michael considered her for a moment, then reached into his bag and pulled out a small document. "This is Horizon's ethical framework for AI development and implementation. It's not proprietary. We believe these principles should be widely adopted across the industry." He handed her the document, which was simply titled Horizon Principles. "Thank you," Patricia said, genuinely touched by the gesture. It wasn't a business agreement, but it was an opening, a willingness to share knowledge. "Read it," Michael suggested. "Discuss it with your team. Think about what implementing these principles would really mean for Pinnacle, not just in your marketing materials, but in your hiring practices, your development processes, your business decisions." Patricia nodded, already scanning the first page of the document. The principles were clear and thoughtful, addressing everything from data privacy to algorithmic transparency to considering the social impact of AI applications. "I will," she promised. "And if you're serious about exploring this further," Michael continued, "I'd be open to a more formal discussion about potential collaboration, not immediately. I want you to have time to reflect and discuss these ideas with your team, but perhaps in a few weeks, once you've had a chance to consider what real changes at Pinnacle might look like." It wasn't the immediate partnership Patricia had hoped for when she first sought this meeting, but it was more meaningful than a purely transactional agreement would have been. "I appreciate that opportunity," she said sincerely, "and regardless of where that discussion leads, I value the perspective you've shared today." Michael smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "You know, Ms. Winters, when Carlos first told me you wanted to meet, I was skeptical. I've had plenty of experiences with executives who suddenly find me worthy of their time once they realize who I am." "I'm sure you have," Patricia said, feeling a twinge of shame at recognizing herself in that description. "But few of them have been willing to acknowledge the bias that informed their initial judgment," he continued. "That takes a certain kind of courage and self-awareness." Patricia hadn't expected this turn in the conversation, from her apologizing to him offering something like respect. "Or just desperation," she said with unexpected honesty. "Pinnacle needs what Horizon has built." Michael laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "Maybe both can be true. The best growth often happens when our principles and our practical needs align." They talked for another 30 minutes, the conversation shifting to their respective journeys in the tech industry. Patricia found herself sharing challenges she rarely discussed. The isolation of being one of few women CEOs in the field, the constant pressure to prove herself. Michael listened attentively, offering insights from his own experience without ever suggesting their struggles were equivalent. He spoke about building Horizon away from the spotlight, about choosing investors who shared his values, even when others offered more money with fewer strings attached. As their meeting drew to a close, Patricia felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the intellectual excitement of having her perspective genuinely challenged and expanded. They stood, and this time Patricia extended her hand first. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Thompson, and for your willingness to look past our first encounter." "Michael, please," he said, shaking her hand firmly. "And thank you for your honesty today. It's rarer than it should be in these circles." As he walked away, Patricia remained standing for a moment, the Horizon Principles document in her hand. She had come to this meeting hoping to secure a business advantage. She was leaving with something more valuable, a challenge to rethink not just Pinnacle's technology, but its entire approach to business and ethics. Back in her hotel room, Patricia canceled her flight home. She needed time to process what had happened, to read the document thoroughly, and to think about what implementing these principles would really mean for Pinnacle. She called Robert and asked him to clear her schedule for the evening. No business dinners, no networking events. For the first time in years, Patricia Winters needed quiet time to think about the kind of leader she had been, and the kind she wanted to become. 6 months had passed since the Business Innovation Summit in Chicago. The early autumn sunshine streamed through the windows of Pinnacle Solutions' redesigned headquarters in Boston, catching the new company logo, a subtle evolution of their previous design, but with warmer colors and a more organic feel. Patricia Winters stood at the window of her office, watching employees gather in the central courtyard for the monthly town hall meeting. From 15 floors up, she could see the diversity of the crowd below, a marked change from a year ago when Pinnacle's staff had been noticeably homogeneous. A knock at her door broke her contemplation. Robert entered, tablet in hand as always, but his demeanor had changed over these months too, more collaborative partner than deferential assistant. "Everything's ready for the announcement," he said. "The team from Horizon just arrived. They're in the green room." Patricia nodded, checking her reflection in the window. She looked different somehow. Still polished and professional, but less rigid. The perpetual furrow between her brows softened. "The board members?" she asked. "All present, including the 3 new additions," Robert confirmed. "And the press is set up in the back of the auditorium." Today marked the official announcement of the partnership between Pinnacle Solutions and Horizon Technologies, a collaboration that had taken 6 months of careful negotiation, soul-searching, and significant changes at Pinnacle. "And Michael?" Patricia asked. "Arrived 10 minutes ago. He's chatting with the development team like they're old friends." Patricia smiled at that. Michael Thompson had that rare quality of making everyone feel valued, regardless of their title or position. It was one of many things she had come to admire about him. As they walked toward the elevator, Patricia reflected on the journey that had brought them to this day. After returning from Chicago, she had spent weeks reading everything she could about ethical AI development, diverse hiring practices, and inclusive product design. She had distributed the Horizon Principles document to her entire executive team, requiring them to come prepared for a full-day discussion of how these principles might reshape Pinnacle. That meeting had been contentious at times. Some executives saw the potential transformation immediately. Others resisted, viewing it as a distraction from their core business. 2 had eventually left the company, unable or unwilling to embrace the new direction. 3 weeks after the conference, Patricia had traveled to San Francisco for her first formal meeting with Michael and his team at Horizon's headquarters. She had brought a small delegation, her CTO, her head of product development, and surprisingly, a junior developer who had been advocating for more inclusive design practices for years, largely unheard until now. That meeting had been eye-opening. Horizon's offices weren't the flashy tech headquarters she had expected, but a thoughtfully designed space that emphasized collaboration and well-being. Their team was remarkably diverse, not just in terms of race and gender, but also in educational background, previous industry experience, and cognitive approaches. Most striking was how they worked together. In the technical demonstrations and planning discussions, Patricia observed none of the posturing and status games so common in tech companies. Ideas were evaluated on their merits, not on who proposed them. Junior team members spoke up without hesitation, and executives listened with genuine interest. After that initial meeting, the real work had begun. Rather than simply licensing Horizon's technology, they had established a true partnership, one that involved not just technical integration, but a fundamental rethinking of Pinnacle's approach to product development, hiring, and company culture. Michael Lee had been both supportive and demanding throughout the process. He had connected Patricia with resources and advisors who helped guide Pinnacle's transformation, but he had also been clear that the partnership would move forward only if Pinnacle demonstrated genuine commitment to change. Now, 6 months later, they were ready to announce the results of that work to the world. As the elevator descended to the lobby, Patricia mentally reviewed her speech. This announcement was about more than a business partnership or a technological integration. It was about admitting mistakes, embracing growth, and committing to a different way of doing business. The auditorium was packed when she arrived. Employees, board members, industry press, and representatives from both companies. As Patricia made her way to the stage, she caught sight of Michael in the front row, giving her an encouraging nod. The room quieted as she took her position at the podium, the Pinnacle and Horizon logos displayed side by side on the screen behind her. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady. "Today marks a significant milestone for Pinnacle Solutions, not just because of the partnership we're announcing with Horizon Technologies, but because of the journey that brought us to this moment." Patricia looked out at the diverse faces of her company, both the long-standing employees and the many new hires who had joined in recent months. 6 months ago, at the Business Innovation Summit in Chicago, I had what I can only describe as a wake-up call. It came in the form of a missed handshake and a keynote speech that changed my perspective on what technology companies can and should be. From the front row, Michael gave her a small smile. They had discussed whether she would share this story publicly, and both had agreed that transparency was essential. I had the opportunity to meet Michael Thompson, the founder and CEO of Horizon Technologies, at a reception, and I failed to recognize not just who he was professionally, but his fundamental worth as a person deserving of basic respect. A hushed silence fell over the room. It was rare for a CEO to admit such a personal failing in a public forum. "I didn't shake his hand," Patricia continued, her voice steady but humble. "I made a split-second judgment based on unconscious biases I hadn't even acknowledged to myself. It wasn't until the next day when he delivered a groundbreaking keynote address that I realized my error, both the practical business mistake and the more important human one." She paused, letting the weight of that admission sink in. Many business leaders might have responded differently to my subsequent outreach. They might have enjoyed the opportunity to turn the tables, to dismiss me as I had dismissed them. Michael Thompson did something far more valuable. He engaged in an honest conversation about bias, about ethical technology development, and about the kind of companies we could build if we were willing to challenge our assumptions. Patricia gestured toward Michael in acknowledgement. That conversation led to many more, about how AI systems reflect the biases of their creators unless deliberately designed otherwise, about how homogeneous teams build limited products that serve limited markets, about how technology can either reinforce existing inequalities or help create a more equitable world. She turned slightly to address her employees directly. "These conversations have transformed Pinnacle over the past 6 months. We've revamped our hiring practices, resulting in a 60% increase in team diversity across multiple dimensions. We've restructured our product development process to include ethical impact assessments at every stage. We've established a fellowship program that brings people from underrepresented communities into tech careers, with 20 fellows starting next month. Patricia returned her gaze to the wider audience. Today, we're announcing a groundbreaking partnership between Pinnacle Solutions and Horizon Technologies. Together, we're launching an integrated AI ecosystem that will help businesses transform their operations while adhering to the highest ethical standards. She went on to outline the technical details of the partnership, how Pinnacle's enterprise software would incorporate Horizon's advanced AI capabilities, creating solutions that were both more powerful and more responsibly designed than anything else on the market. But this partnership represents something beyond technology, Patricia continued. It represents a commitment to doing business differently, to recognizing that diverse teams build better products, to understanding that ethical considerations aren't obstacles to innovation, but catalysts for more meaningful advancement. As she concluded her remarks, Patricia invited Michael to join her onstage. They shook hands firmly, a simple gesture loaded with meaning for both of them. Michael took the microphone, his calm presence immediately commanding attention. "Thank you, Patricia," he began. "Your willingness to reflect on that moment in Chicago and to translate that reflection into meaningful change at Pinnacle has been remarkable to witness.